Nikhil is a college student who plays football during leisure time. He wants to pursue the game seriously and starts strength training at the college gym. He seeks your advice. He has no prior experience in performing workouts. As a coach, trainer, therapist, how would you help him in designing his training program at gym and enhance his sports performance? If you're looking for answers to these questions, you're in the right place. Welcome to this NPTEL offered course on physical medicine and rehabilitation in sports and today's lecture on key components of sports conditioning. With me, Wing Commander Chandrasekhar Guru. I am a sports medicine physician, associate professor in Department of Sports Medicine, Armed Forces Medical College. The learning objectives of today's lecture would be to understand the purpose of sports conditioning and to discuss various components of sports conditioning program. We'll try to integrate the concept of or the components of sports conditioning with the principles of strength training periodization. And we'll also discuss certain practical aspects in terms of incorporating a sports conditioning program in the strength training sessions or programs. So the principles of sports training, by this time, I think you must be really clear about the principle of sports training. Starts with specificity, individuality, principle of reversibility or detraining, principle of progressive overload, where you increase the load over a period of time progressively, and finally the principle of variability or principle of periodization. So adhering to these principles are very important to have an effective training program and avoid plateau and burnout, and it also prevents injury. So what is sports conditioning? Sports conditioning lays the foundation of any sports training program. So the base is formed by the sports conditioning, wherein the basic motor qualities are addressed. Irrespective of the sports, you basically address to all the important motor qualities of the individual, and it basically kind of prepares the individual to further endure the sports specific training. So that is the importance of sports conditioning. So we already know, and we have been repeatedly discussing about periodization. So periodization is a logical systematic process of sequencing and integrating various training aspects to achieve peak performance at various appropriate times of the training cycle. So it helps in changing the training variables to reach the outcome or in optimizing the performance, and also reduces the risk of burnout and injuries. So we also have learned about various aspect of training cycle, how the training cycle is framed, the concept of macro cycle, the mesocycle, and the microcycle, and why it is important to understand this in the initial stage itself before designing a strength and training program. And we have also dealt with the periodization cycle in terms of off season, where you need more emphasis on strength hypertrophy and basic strength. It is made mainly to kind of improve the general fitness of the individual before going on to a sport specific fitness aspect. Next comes the pre-season or the pre-competitive, where your focus is more towards the sport specific aspects like strength and power, and also maintaining the basic strength. Then comes the most important competitive phase or the in-season phase, where you strive at maintaining it and then peaking and tapering it. This mainly more concerned towards the sports specific aspects of the training. The subsequent phase is called as the post season phase, or which is mainly towards the goal is mainly in terms of maintaining the physical adaptations that has happened, and not to get into the stage of detraining. So you are in a state of active rest with mainly focus on the mobility and the movement patterns and cross training activities, where the volume maxillaris intensity are kept at bare minimum. So that's all about the sports specific periodization that we have been discussing. So now, how do you fit the sports conditioning in the periodization cycle? So it's very intriguing. If you see, the off season is the preparatory period, pre season is the pre competitive, in season is the competitive, and post season is the transition period, right? So the sports conditioning phase has a major role to play in the preparatory phase or the off season phase, where you are laying down the foundation. So based on the foundation, you prepare the individual to endure the more of a sports specific training that is about to happen in the pre-competitive and the competitive phases. So the conditioning has a major role to play in the preparatory phase or the off-season phase. Subsequently, as the individual progress to the pre-season or the pre-competitive phase, the emphasis is more shifted towards the sport specific drills. So you are just moving towards the competitive phase. So your focus is more onto the sport specific drills and developing the strength gains just relevant to the sport. So the conditioning aspect of it, which is addressing the basic motor qualities, is slightly reduced. Subsequently, when you reach the competitive phase, you're just maintaining the uh, whatever accrued adaptations that you have gained over a period of time during the training cycle, and limiting only to the sporting or the competitions, right? And trying to maintain whatever that has been uh, gained. So the role of sports conditioning here will be very less, minimal, just in terms of maintaining the aspect of it. And then the subsequent phase is the transition phase, where the individual is more into cross training aspect with a low load as well as low intensity. So again, the role of sports conditioning gradually improves here. So if you see, the role here as is gradually increased. If you, as per the thickness of the harrow also, it denotes that there's a major role to play in the initial preparatory phase. Subsequently, the role actually comes down in terms of conditioning, because the individual is more prepared towards the sport specific activities. So here the conditioning role is reduced. And again, as the individual goes into a transition phase, here you have a further increase in the role of the sports conditioning programs. So, and having understood the purpose of sports conditioning and how it is incorporated in a periodization of the program, it is important also to know what are the various components of the conditioning program, because as we said, it includes basic motor qualities, right? So basic motor qualities would mean involves aerobic training, speed and agility training, flexibility and mobility. Flexibility in terms of the passive muscle length, and mobility in terms of more of an active neuromuscular component in terms of the range of motion. Resistance training, the basic strength that is required, to further have a basic foundation to move on to the next level. And then also the balance and coordination, because movement, motor control, movement pattern, balance, these are the important aspect that helps in kind of having a better neural adaptation, which you have seen in the previous lectures, that any kind of movement, the neural adaptations are important for subsequent buildup of the adaptations in terms of muscular gains. So the incorporating balance and coordination is also important. So let's see each one of them. Coming to the aerobic training, even though the name is aerobic training, it is important to incorporate that in almost every sports, because the requirement may be more or less, the percentage of requirement may vary, but then it's an essential motor component for optimal improvement in the performance. So aerobic training is mainly for aerobic conditioning, replenishment of the stores. Even if the individual is into power sports, the replenishment happens to the oxidative system. So it's important to have base level of aerobic conditioning there as well. And as a modality of concurrent training, say even in strength trained athletes, you need to have certain amount of aerobic training. So you can use aerobic methods as a concurrent training methods as well. So the periodization, generally the focus of aerobic training, it cannot be there in the pre-competitive or the competitive phase, right? Because you are more focused towards the sport specific drills there. So the aerobic training has to be focused mainly in the preparatory phase or the off season phase. You have to develop that cardiorespiratory fitness during that phase. What about the training methods? So the training method again depends on the type of sports. Say for example, we are looking at distance runners. In long distance runners, even though they are long distance runners, the predominant source of fuel is fat, using the oxidative metabolism, and the carbohydrates using the oxidative metabolism. They also need the anaerobic pathway for race completion towards the end, when they need a lot of increase in the power generation to complete the race and do it in a shortest possible time. So there the concept of anaerobic glycolysis and the ATP PCR things comes in. So the training has to be there to trigger these energy systems as well. So some of the training methods that are used are interval training, where you give 1 minute of interval based sprints and then followed by 2 minutes of rest interval. Fartlek or a speed play is nothing but increase 30 seconds of high speed activity followed by about 2.5 minutes of a slow jog, just to reduce the intensity to the lowest level. So that gives time for kind of replenishment of the stores as well. It can be a maximum aerobic speed training wherein you have equal contribution in terms of 15 seconds of high intense activity and 15 seconds of rest as well. So the rest interval is accordingly decided. It can also be aerobic training, can also be part of a cross training, wherein in sports injury rehabilitation, where you have injury to your ankle, for example, but then you will not be able to run, right, with an ankle injury. So but then you can improve your cardiovascular fitness by probably involving yourself in other endurance activity like swimming or circuit training using upper body weight training. So these are various aspects by which you can improve the cardiovascular fitness, but then you don't you protect the injured part as well. So that's the importance of cross training method in sports rehabilitation. The second motor quality which one needs to consider in conditioning program is speed and agility training, right? The goal here in speed and agility training is to maintain the running speed, right? Similarly, as we discussed in the previous aerobic conditioning, like long distance runners, they need this running speed towards the end of the race to complete the race. So you need a lot of power and strength development as well. So it can also be used in terms of speed and agility training is used to improve the technique as well, to improve the efficiency, and also in sports where change of direction and reaction are required. So these are mainly to improve the agility aspect of it. The shortest distance with the immediate change in the direction and the reaction is the agility part of it. So the periodization will feature more in the preparatory phase, and depending on the sports, say if the individual is a footballer, obviously you need to have agility drills more in the pre-competitive phase as well, because that is going to simulate the sports as well. So that's how you can periodize it in the pre-competitive phase as well. Various training methods are in speed and agility training phase. You can actually use this particular type of training to correct the technique as well. The movement patterns also can be used, so they can be incorporated as part of the skill training in the part of warm up or in the precision specific warm up as well. So that way the speed and agility training can be both a conditioning as well as be a skill training as well during the preparatory phase or the sport specific phase. The movement patterns have to be addressed. Say it has to be a proper correction of movement pattern, so that the motor or the neural adaptation are also made. Like in case of a sprinter, if you're giving a speed and agility training, it is important to also do the movement technique correction, wherein high knee drives, exaggerated heel lifts, and horizontal foot position throughout the sprint motion have to be emphasized during the movement drills. You can also include a speed interval training. Agility drills may be also incorporated with certain amount of decision making. It's not like simply placing cones and then asking to change the direction, but you can also give inputs from the coach to which type of which direction the individual has to change. So such kind of reaction also helps in kind of individual to get acquainted to the reaction drills as well. So that should be the kind of combination drills that can be worked out with speed and agility training. With flexibility and mobility is basically to increase the range of motion and by decreasing the muscle stiffness, and also to improve the neuromuscular coordination. So it is an important aspect in terms of injury prevention, and also can be used in isolation as a recovery method as part of an active recovery or an active rest in the microcycle as well. So the periodization would be, it can be part of the warm up or a cool down session. It is invariably a major chunk is in the preparatory phase, where you address also the limitations in the range of motion of particular joint, where it is required for the sports as well. So that also can be a good way of addressing to this flexibility and mobility training. And obviously, because of its relaxing nature, especially with the flexibility aspect of it, it can be incorporated in the transition phase as well. So there, after a long stress of training, during the transition phase, such flexibility limitations or the impairments can be addressed. The training methods generally, in a warm up session, then it will be more of a dynamic stretching exercises using sport specific patterns. Say for example, commonly you would have seen in track and field athletes following an ABC pattern of increasing the range of motion of the hip and then gradually increasing the speed and the movement of the lower limbs. So also stretching exercise like dynamic stretching exercise can be used in tendinopathy rehabilitation as well. How about the stretching exercise as a static form? It can be used in cool down methods, wherein in cool down, as part of the cool down routine, they can be used for static holds, and thereafter causes relaxation to the muscle group as well. So that way they can increase the flexibility, but also they also help in promoting recovery as well. There's one more form of training method, namely the proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation. This is called as PNF method of stretching. Again, this has come from the neuro rehabilitation, wherein here you can use this particular concept of PNF to improve the range of motion. So it is found to have a better increase in the range of motion in PNF stretching. So this can be also part of separate sessions if there is deficit that needs to be addressed, or it can be also part of active recovery sessions as well. In injury rehabilitation per se, the flexibility and mobility training is predominantly used in the phase 1, because phase 1 you have the force production will be less, and thereafter you can increase the range of motion, which is the main kind of focus in phase 1. So you can increase the range of motion by incorporating flexibility in the phase 1. So generally in injury rehab programs, flexibility training and mobility training are incorporated in the phase 1 of the rehab. Moving on to the next important motor quality, that is the resistant training. And we've been discussing about strength training in the past few lectures. So you must be well aware that resistant training goal is mainly to correct the muscular imbalances and the asymmetries which are there, to improve the basic level of strength, so that the individual can build up on the sport specific strength. And also the type of quality that needs to be addressed can be developed right from the conditioning program itself. Say an endurance, strength endurance, or a hypertrophy, or a power can be decided based on that. And obviously in injury rehabilitation, resistant training has a major role to play to improve the outcome of the injury rehab. How do you periodize this? I think we have discussed it in detail in the previous two lectures, wherein you now know that how you would periodize strength training program over a training cycle. Various training methods are available. For basic strength, you go for overall strength foundation. Different strength qualities can be achieved by modulating the volume and the rest intervals and the load that one lifts. And in case if you are periodizing for the rehabilitation, start with isometric to concentric action to an eccentric, and thereafter to a plyometric activities. So how do you fit this resistant training in a periodization cycle? I think again we have discussed in detail in the previous lecture, wherein the preparatory phase will have more of a strength endurance hypertrophy phase. The load has to be low to moderate and volume is high. So to start with, the volume is high, and then as the phases of training increases, the volume gradually decreases. It is more of an intensity increase and volume is decreased. That's how the strength training programs kind of changes in the periodization cycle. How about the balance and coordination training? Balance and coordination training, the goal is mainly to improve the neuromuscular control, helpful in injury prevention, as well as it is used in injury rehabilitation. The periodization is in the the major chunk of the conditioning is in the preparatory phase. Balance and coordination is also in the preparatory phase. It also forms a main part in the transition phase as well, where you can address the impairment and the deficits. And in injury rehabilitation, it has a major role to play, especially starting from phase 1, later part of phase 1 and phase 2. Balance and coordination is very important, so that becomes part of the long term injury prevention, as well as it also reduces the risk of re-injury. So in injury rehabilitation, as I said, more of phase 1 is focused towards balance and coordination, movement control, and subsequently into phase 2 with progression gradually from simple to complex tasks. Say for an ankle injury, you initially start with a single stance, eyes open, progress to single stance, closed eyes, then progress to single stance with mobile platform with different kind of platforms that are available. And you can add a complex task wherein a single stance, eyes open with mobile platform, and adding a task in terms of catching the ball and in from different directions. So that's the complexity of the task that you can increase with the improvement in the individual. So when we discuss about the conditioning program, it is also important to know certain errors which is more commonly kind of committed. So the common errors in conditioning program is that again the programs are made so generic, and the least of the attention is given to the individual variation aspect of it, ignoring the sports demand. So even though sports conditioning lays down a basic foundation, the sports demand should never be ignored, and some amount of specificity has to be incorporated, because that is what the requirement in terms of sports training, wherein you are looking for specific sports performance. So the training principle also has to align with that kind of outcome. Monitoring is again an important aspect. Only when we monitor, we will be able to institute the corrective action then and there. So that gives a feedback both to the athlete as well as to the trainer or the therapist as well. Overtraining is again an important aspect. If you don't give appropriate periodization principle in your strength training program, and recovery, if you don't give recovery, adaptations may not happen. So obviously the entire training will not actually yield you better result. So let's discuss the case scenario which we started with. Nikhil, a college student who plays basketball during leisure time. He wants to pursue the game seriously and start strength training at the college gym. So he seeks your advice. He has no prior experience in performing any workout at all. So as a coach, trainer, therapist, how would you help him designing his program at gym and enhance his sports performance? So it's shown that the young recreational athlete has no prior strength training. So you need to know what is the athlete profile. Athlete profile would mean what is the present status, what is the training age of the individual, what about the injury history, has he had any kind of injury to any of the region. Sports need is important. Like see here, it is the basketball, so you need to know what is the kind of strength goal or the demand of the sport that is there in that individual, depending on the position of the player as well. So and again, if you know when the next competition is and how many competitions are planned, so you can also make the annual training cycle. So with this, you can plan a sports conditioning program generally lasting 6 to 8 weeks. You can start with an aerobic conditioning aspect, slowly incorporate the mobility and the flexibility training aspect during the subsequent 4 to 6 weeks. The basic strength training has to be incorporated, starting from multiple joint based exercises to single joint based exercise, and depending on the position involved, the strength training program also can be progressed uh, from a generic kind of a strength training to a more of a specific kind of strength training. And since it's a high mobility game, it is important that speed and agility drills are also need to be added to the program, maybe possibly towards the 6 to 8 weeks, because when you say speed and agility, it also involves more of deceleration control of the muscles. So that will take at least 6 weeks for the individual to have basic strength, and thereafter work on the eccentric kind of activity. So probably this can be planned towards the end of the conditioning program, around 6th or 8th week of the program. So to summarize, sports conditioning lays the basic foundation for further sports specific program. It prepares the athlete for specific drills and strength gains. The conditioning program should be integral part of any sports training program, and it has a major chunk to play in the preparatory, in the off season and post season as cross training sessions. It also has a major role to play in sports rehabilitation, and mainly in kind of addressing the deficits of that particular athlete towards the sports demands. So for those of you who are interested further in in-depth reading, these are the references that you can kind of go through. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for attending the lectures today. Jai Hind.